All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. We're going to kick off a case study here with the ultimate first appearance of Scooby Doo, one of our favorite pet detectives in this Gold Key special dated 1969. This one's a pretty rare book and fairly hard to find given that it was Gold Key. And this one is a true unicorn, almost impossible to find in high grade. So I was happy to pick this one up off of my comic shop on an auction. They graded it a 2.0, and I'm hoping we're going to get this thing all the way up to a 4.0. After some TLC and love, maybe even a 4.5 if we're super lucky. Right off the bat, you can see that the spine is super worn and there are a lot of ticks. These things are really going to cost you in the grade department, where not only are they ticks, but they're actually starting to be a little bit of tears along the spine. And you can see that the staple has some weakness and some light creasing around it, but the spine is intact if you hold it there, so there's no major spine splitting. The staples look okay. There's no major tanning, so I would call it off-white to white. You know, it's a little bit darker on top there and a little bit darker on the bottom than it is in the middle. But all in all, I would call it, you know, off-white to white pages. Maybe off-white if you wanted to be super harsh. There's a little bit of a tear on the back there, but that's relatively small. So, you know, maybe a quarter inch to a half inch. No major tearing. And most of the creasing, you know, that I think is just dirt up there. We'll see when we dry clean it. But most of the creasing is going to be down here. And then we're just going to have an inordinate amount of surface wear. So if you look at there, you can just see how many wrinkles and finger bends and you know, really light surface creasing there are. Now, one thing I want to point out, because I see people angry about this on Facebook all the time, is they say, you know, I sent this book to get pressed. CGC said there's still finger bends in it. If my presser were competent, he would get out all of the bends. Well, this kind of thing here is a finger bend, and you can clearly see it, but if you look, it definitely breaks color right there, and the same is going to be true right there. So, you know, that's definitely a finger bend there in the glare, and if you look straight down at it, it definitely breaks color, and so does this little itty-bitty one over here by the night. And so CGC is still going to call those finger bends, even if they're color breaking and even if they're not really pressable. And so that's one thing I want to just put out there for people to be aware of. Just because CGC uses the word bends in the grader notes does not mean it's necessarily pressable. Other than that, you know, there's a whole bunch of light surface damage down here. But from a grading standpoint, from a technical grade standpoint, the biggest defects are going to be the inordinate amount of spine wear, a lot of the light to moderate creasing over here. And I think all in all, you know, we're going to be able to really touch this thing up. No major stains, a little bit of light rust transfer, a little mini tear, but nothing crazy. So I'm hoping that this thing will come in at least a 4 or a 4.5 after some work. And we're going to have to do some dry cleaning. I'll probably hit it with a little bit of a bled, and then we'll see if I want it to hang out in my PC raw or if I end up setting it into CGC. I have a pretty extensive first appearance of the pets. So I have Crypto, the first Super Hound. I've got Ace, the Batman pet detective. And I have Lockjaw, the pet Avengers. And so now I've got Scooby Doo here joining the team as well, as my wife and I are pretty big Scooby Doo, or, you know, pet fans and dog people for sure. So this one's pretty awesome to pick up, and, you know, really rare one to find in the wild, and a true unicorn and genuinely high grade. But you know, it has all the classic Scooby-Doo vibe and everything I grew up with. This one I think is actually a retelling of the first episode of Where Are You, Scooby-Doo, where the knight ends up getting shipped, the Black Knight. And so, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Definitely worth a rewatch of the series, but pretty cool overall. All right, so I'm going to take a pause, get out my dry cleaning supplies, and we'll go nuts on this one. All right, here we are. We've got our Swiffer dryer sheet, a Mr. Clean magic eraser sheet, my Click Patel pen, and my micro eraser here that you can see. And we're just going to try to hit all those light areas. And this one's actually not too bad compared to some of these that I've seen. I've pressed 3 or 4 of these for other people and never owned one myself. These really dark lines, you know, I think it makes sense to go to the micro eraser and really try to get them. But this one's actually not the worst shape of the books that I've pressed for this issue. Like I said, it's super rare, and it's incredibly rare and high grade. Pretty much anything above a 6 is like a phantom book. Especially for a book of the era, you know, you'd think that there would be, you know, some of them out there, but some of these niche books, you know, people just didn't take care of because they weren't Spider-Man or they weren't the Avengers, you know, of the era. So just give them to their kids to read, so who can blame them for that? All right, we got some of our work here on thread, but we're gonna have to use a little bit more pressure than I'd like. And because we have all the black lines around this shirt, I'm using the micro eraser here so that I make sure I don't hit the color, particularly if I'm using a little bit more pressure. Because otherwise you will rub off ink. So I think that looks pretty good overall. Yellows are always dangerous, so you want to use particular care when going over them, but these do have a little bit of surface dirt, so we're just going to go over all of it there and try to spend a little bit more time in the Y here. That's it. The "Where Are You" looks pretty good. Yeah, so we'll get that. All right, flip it on over. There's plenty of dirt back here. Now, these staple rust marks do not come off with the bled, and I have seen them get worse with the bled treatment. The staple rust presumably has a lot of iron. Iron has all kinds of interesting and complicated chemistry with hydrogen peroxide, which is what we use in the bled, and so I'm not surprised that there's some deleterious effects with rust, but I definitely do not advise doing a lot of blue LED work if you have a lot of rust transfer on the back or staple rust migration. This little bit here is probably going to be fine, but I will actually try to cover that up with a little piece of paper when I put the overlay down, just to try to protect that little spot. It's a relatively recent discovery. On a couple of books, I was able to track it back, I think, to the rust stain. So and you can see those three little dots right there are definitely rust transfer from some other rusted staple comic. It's pushed up against it. And again, you can go over the words. You don't have to be super careful if you're not using a lot of pressure. We'll try to get in here too in a little minute. Plenty of dirt to go around. This book might have a very, very light spine roll, but to me it looks more manufacturing than anything. And the staples are kind of offset on the front. So I don't think that there's a good chance that you're going to be able to fix that. And I don't see like the reader creasing that you'd expect for a true spine roll. So that to me looks like a minor miswrap. We're going to leave that. Do not treat. I know new pressers are usually overzealous to find those true spine rolls, and they kind of go nuts, and a lot of times I think they're treating books that don't actually need to have it. This I would call manufacturing defect. Very light miswrap, nothing crazy. There's, however, some dirt on the open pages, and so I'm going to stick out the eraser and use the broad end here and just kind of rub that up and down the pages. Some darker spots in here that might be true fingerprinting. It's just a really, really dirty comic. There's some light foxing across the bottom here that you can see, so I might justify a little bit of a blue LED. I don't think I need to go overboard. You can have light to moderate foxing way above where this thing's going to grade out, so it's definitely not going to impact the grade in any significant way, but yeah, will hinder eye appeal to a slight amount. Clean up some of the fuzz there. It's nice to be able to do one for the PC here. And I bet you I'll be able to beat a 2.0 on this thing after some work. Just needs a deep dry cleaning and a healthy press. The bled work's actually optional. It's not going to help it really at all. But I'll do it just because I can. So much dirt in here. Getting there, past the halfway point. You can see I'm not really using a whole lot of fancy stuff. I know people like the big absorbing pads or some other, you know, material, but nothing I don't think can beat some solid elbow grease. I know James likes to use Comic Clean on these kinds of books, and there are other wet cleaning supplies out there that people like, but I'll stick with my elbow grease. No risks of leaving streaks in the gloss or having dull spots or too much force or that kind of stuff. So, just all in all, I think it's safer. Oh, broke it off there. I think it gives a really nice result. Usually with the gentle eraser, the gloss actually looks more vibrant when you're done, as you've kind of polished it. Friction can do that. Home stretch here on the top. Let's see if we luck out if this is a crease or if it's just dirt. I'm thinking dirt. I gotta look out here. There might be a little bit of a line up there, but to me that's definitely not a hard crease. So there might be a little bit of creasing there. But to me it was mostly dirt. So it's looking pretty good. I'll take that. It's definitely not a hard color breaking crease. Might ask, can you break color on white? But the answer is yes. So if it leaves clear evidence that the gloss and paper fibers were damaged, it'll still get hit with a crease, even if it is on white. Really dark spot here, right by the G and the N. A little bit more control here. Coming up on that tear, around the tear, we're definitely going to slow down and be more cautious. So I'm going to put my thumb right on that tear, and that way I'm not at risk of snagging it. My thumb's kind of protecting it. We'll do the same thing up over here. There's a little bit of dirt right along the tear, so I'm going to go to my pad here, and I'm going to go in line with the tear to make sure I'm not, you know, at risk of snagging it. So I'm going to go parallel to the tear, and then that's going to be about it on that one. So that's a heck of a lot of dry cleaning we just did there. You can see it looks so much better from arm's length back there, all that schmutz. You might have to come back and hit some of this a little bit harder. But in general, this thing needs a press. It's rare for me to try to set up a double press. Usually I try to take care of everything so I can do it all in one shot. This thing just has so many wrinkles. There's a little bit of a smudge there. Let me grab a cotton round and see if we can get that off. So focused on the white, I missed that there on the red. Usually for schmutz on a cover like that, your cotton round is your best bet. So we're just going to take a nice cotton round, a little bit, yeah, there we go. Look at that, we got most of the gooby off. If you really, really rub it, you will take some ink even with the cotton round, so you don't want to go too crazy, but you know, Still clearly damage there to the gloss, but you know, it's not as noticeable from here, so that's good. Okay, this thing's got so many bends. We're going to need to iron this thing, and so I'm going to set this thing up for a press. Then we'll come back and do some ironing where we think we need to improve it, and then we'll have to do a second follow-up press. So this one's going to be a little bit of a slog. So sit tight, and I'll get this thing in the cooker. All right, this is the result after one press. So again, it still looks a lot better. If you just generally look up there, you can see how much smoother this is overall in a lot of areas. What we're gonna do though is hit this with just a really light blend treatment at the moment to try to hit up some of that light foxing in the back. Overall though, it is considerably improved already. And so I think the strategy from here is actually gonna be a little bit of a blend treatment, and then we're going to throw it back in the press for another go and keep our fingers crossed that that comes out just as good as I hope. All right, here is our mid-work check-in with this copy of Scooby Doo #1. This is post the blue LED treatment. Again, it doesn't look super vibrant, but we were able to take care of some of that light discoloration up top. In general, you'll notice now it looks quite wrinkly, so that's pretty common for these after the blue light treatment. You can see here a lot of like the finger bends and dents and stuff like that. Those all come back after you humidify, and then it dries, and then it humidifies, and then it dries. And so that's pretty normal. That's pretty much the reason why you need to make sure you always finish with a end press. This one's going to hang on out, and we might do a little bit of light ironing in those deep recesses, but then after that we're going to kick this one in the cooker here for a good 15 minutes, and then because of all the depth of the wrinkles and stuff, this one's probably actually going to sit for the full 24 hours, which I don't usually do for most comics. Most of the time 12-hour cool down is just fine, but especially with the deeper defects, it might need a little bit more permanent whack. All right, here we are with the pre-CGC send-off look at this copy of Scooby Doo #1. All in all, it looks a lot better, and I did take pictures, so hopefully I'll remember to post those on Facebook and Instagram when this thing gets back from the slab factory. We'll have to find a couple other vintage books to send with it, but all in all here you can see that you know, it looks a lot better, particularly up here. You know, this area had just countless wrinkles. You know, there's nothing we're going to do about the color breaks down here and, you know, that kind of vein and the sort of stuff here. But in general, this thing is flattened out. It's brighter. It's cleaner. I think it looks really good. You know, it was coming in graded like a 2.0, and I bet you this thing's going to hit a 4, if not a 4.5 from CGC. So I'm going to call that a pretty good look at a really truly key book here from you know, Gold Key. So stay tuned. All right, folks, the jury is back with a verdict here on this copy of Scooby Doo #1. This thing was originally purchased from my comic shop as a Gold Key 2.0 good comic. And we did an awful lot of work on this thing, including all of our blend treatments, some you know, extensive dry cleaning, and it looks pretty dang sharp from arm's length, so I'm pretty pleased about that. And CGC has deemed this a 5.0 white page copy, and I think that is, you know, a lot better than I would have hoped for on this. Personally, I was hoping for a 4.40 copy with off-white white pages, and so landing a 5.0 copy with white pages is pretty stellar. You can go ahead and grab that serial note here, because at the beginning I made a stink about the word bends and how CGC uses them in the grader notes. And so lo and behold, if you open this up here, the grader notes are spine stress lines, so check that. Tear with crease, top of back cover, so we called that out in the initial pre-screen. Multiple bend to cover, multiple crease by right bottom of front cover. And just so we're all up to date here, this is undoubtedly the same book with that same corner creasing down over here, and so we're, at least if the CGC webpage will work, I can zoom in over there. So that's definitely the same creasing on this book. We're undoubtedly talking about the same one. And as I correctly predicted here, the spine is trashed, which is going to be a major deal there. The crease on the back cover with the tear, so I called that out in the initial inspection. Here are the multiple creases, and again, CGC is going to view this as 1 crease, 2 crease, 3 crease, so that's going to get triply hit down there with a 4th crease and a 5th crease right through there. But that word multiple bend on cover doesn't mean that I did a bad job pressing this. What it means is all these little white ticks here are coming from the finger bends from you know, whoever handled this, and you can see them that they're all over the place on this thing, and that's from somebody using their fingernail and scratching it up real good. There's a bunch over here too that you can see. So all of those are going to be when they call light bends. They don't necessarily mean that this thing can be cracked and pressed and flattened. What they're talking about are all these crescent shaped color breaking ticks here. So it's color breaking finger bend, it would be the more appropriate label there, with color breaking being the important part. So you can kind of see that one right in there even. Right there. So, you know, I get that question a lot, and I see an awful lot of hate from people thinking that their presser just sucked it up and couldn't do their day job. But the truth is that all those are going to be deep color breaks that are not really going to be pressable. Unfortunately, the verbiage that CGC uses on their grader notes is the word bend, and that implies that it should be fixable even if that bend breaks color. And so that's kind of how I wanted to end this. Hopefully you enjoyed watching me improve this thing here. This one's going to be an epic PC book. You know, I'm a big Scooby Doo fan from when Nickelodeon used to do the 25 hours of Scooby Doo over Halloween, and I, you know, grew up here listening to the Scooby Doo cartoons for sure. So this one's a great one. Hopefully you enjoyed watching the process. Leave a thumbs up on the video. Drop a comment down below. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. I'll post pictures of this one on Facebook and Instagram if I remember. And most importantly, keep on collecting what you enjoy, whether it be Scooby Doo, DC, Mega Keys, Moderns, Golden Age Classics, you name it. It's really important that you enjoy the hobby. So take care, everybody.